Hold on to your Honolulu Blue, Lions fans, because Brad Holmes just did it again. While most of the football world was busy arguing about quarterback controversies and preseason hype reels, the Detroit Lions front office quietly, calmly, and confidently added another proven veteran to a defense that is already starting to look like a completely different animal than the one we watched a season ago. The name of the day is Devin White, and if you know anything about NFL linebackers over the last decade, that name should make you sit up straight in your chair. Let's rewind the tape for a second, because context is everything here. All offseason long, Brad Holmes has been telling anybody who would listen, reporters, fans, radio hosts, you name it, that he was not finished building this roster. Over and over, he insisted that the Detroit Lions front office was going to keep working the phones, keep scanning the market, and keep adding pieces until training camp forces hand. A lot of fans nodded along politely, the way you do when someone tells you they're still working on it, half expecting a quiet offseason finish. Well, turns out Brad Holmes was not blowing smoke. He meant every word of it. And the timing of this Devin White signing proves the man is operating with a plan that most of us are only now starting to see clearly. So who exactly is walking into the Detroit Lions locker room? Devin White is not some flyer camp body or a name plucked off the street to fill a roster spot. This is a former 5th overall draft pick, a former second-team All-Pro, a former Pro Bowler, and yes, a Super Bowl champion. Back in his second NFL season with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, White was a driving force behind a defense that helped deliver a Lombardi trophy. And for a stretch there, he looked like one of the most explosive sideline-to-sideline linebackers anywhere in professional football. That 2020 campaign alone, the one where he racked up 140 tackles, 9 sacks, and forced a fumble, is the kind of season that gets a player paid for a decade if he can ever recapture even half of that form. But here's where the story gets interesting. And here's where the tabloid headlines about former superstar and journeyman both apply at the exact same time. After that magical run in Tampa, Devin White's career took a winding road. He bounced from the Buccaneers to a brief and forgettable stop with the Eagles, where he never even took a regular season snap. From there, it was on to Houston for a partial season, and then finally to the Las Vegas Raiders, where something clicked again. Last season, wearing the silver and black, White started all 17 games for the first time since 2022, and he put together a genuinely wild statistical campaign. We are talking about a career-high 174 tackles, which was good enough for third most in the entire National Football League, trailing only a small handful of players, one of whom just so happens to already be on the Lions roster in Jack Campbell. Add in 2.5 sacks, 11 tackles for loss, 7 quarterback hits, a forced fumble, and an interception, and you start to understand why this move is generating so much buzz across Lions social media right now. Now, before we get too carried away crowning this the signing of the century, let's slow down and talk about the other side of the story, because tabloid energy means giving you the full picture, not just the highlight reel. Devin White's tackle numbers were gaudy in Las Vegas, but the tape told a slightly messier story. Advanced metrics and coverage charting had him struggling in pass defense last year. Across more than 500 coverage snaps, he allowed a startling number of completions, a high completion percentage against him, a couple of touchdowns surrendered, and missed tackle issues that Raiders fans were not shy about pointing out on a weekly basis. He is also, historically, a player who has not always graded out kindly by the analytics community, even during some of his more productive tackle count seasons. So is Devin White walking into Allen Park as a bona fide difference maker? Or is he walking in as a name-brand body who racks up stats in garbage time and struggles when the ball is actually in the air? Honestly, that answer is still up for debate, and it is exactly the kind of storyline that is going to make this Lions linebacker room must-watch television all summer long. Here's what we do know for certain. This is a 1-year contract. That tells you everything about how both sides are approaching this. Devin White gets a fresh start, a real opportunity to prove that last year in Las Vegas was not a fluke, and a chance to rebuild his stock heading into another free agency cycle. The Lions, meanwhile, get a low-risk, potentially very high-reward rotational piece without having to commit long-term money or draft capital to fill an area of need. If this works, Brad Holmes looks like a genius who found a discount superstar. If it does not work, the Lions move on in 12 months with minimal damage. That is exactly the kind of value swing that has defined Holmes' tenure as general manager. And it is a big reason why this front office keeps getting the benefit of the doubt from the fan base. And make no mistake, this signing did not happen in a vacuum. The timing lines up almost perfectly with some unwelcome news out of training camp. Rookie linebacker Jimmy Rolder, who has been turning heads throughout the summer, left practice early after suffering a leg injury. Right now, all we officially know is what the team's public relations department has confirmed, that he is going to miss some time, but the injury is not currently believed to be a long-term, season-altering situation. Is it an ankle? A hamstring? Something more serious that just hasn't been fully disclosed yet? At this point, nobody outside the building knows for sure, and until the Lions provide a clearer update, everything else is speculation. What we can say with confidence is that losing a promising rookie linebacker, even temporarily, for a defense that was already going to lean heavily on that position group, is the kind of hole that a front office wants to fill immediately rather than hope it works itself out. Devin White landing in Detroit within 24 hours of that injury news is not a coincidence. It is Brad Holmes doing exactly what he said he would do all offseason, staying flexible, staying aggressive, and reacting the moment an opportunity or a need presents itself. Let's zoom out and talk about how this fits into the bigger picture for this Lions defense, because that is really the story that matters heading into the 2026 season. Jack Campbell has already established himself as one of the premier linebackers in the entire NFL, regardless of position, and that is not tabloid hype. That is simply where the tape and the numbers have him. Alongside him, Derek Barnes has reportedly shown up to camp leaner, faster, and more explosive, already flashing in practice reps. And now you are adding a player with a Super Bowl ring, a Pro Bowl selection, and a track record of elite tackle production into that same room. On paper, that front seven is starting to look absolutely loaded, and that matters enormously for a Lions team whose identity under Dan Campbell has always been built on one simple mantra: stop the run first, then get after the quarterback. Everybody around this organization, players, coaches, front office executives, media, and fans alike, seems to agree on one thing without much argument. This Lions offense is going to be an absolute problem for opposing defenses this season. The real question, the one that will define how far this team can go, is whether the defense can rise to meet that firepower. If the Lions defense can climb into the middle of the pack in the league rankings, this team is going to do serious damage in the NFC North and beyond. If they can somehow sneak into the top 10, we could be talking about a legitimate championship contender. Devin White is now part of that equation, whether he ends up as a full-time starter, a valuable rotational piece, or, worst case, a depth signing that quietly fades into camp competition. At 28 years old, Devin White sits in that fascinating in-between zone for NFL players. He is not a young and proven prospect anymore, but he is nowhere close to washed up or declining purely due to age. He is right in the window where a change of scenery, a new scheme, and a motivated mindset can absolutely reignite a career. Some fans and analysts are already saying his best days are firmly behind him, pointing to the bumpy tape and the string of short stays across 4 different organizations. Others are pointing to that gaudy 2025 tackle total and arguing he is just getting started on the second chapter of his career, one where a stable, well-coached organization like Detroit finally gives him the structure to put it all together. The truth, as it usually does, probably lives somewhere in the middle. But there is no denying this. Devin White in Honolulu Blue is officially one of the more fascinating storylines to track heading into the final stretch of training camp. And this might not even be the last move Brad Holmes has up his sleeve. If recent history with this front office has taught Lions fans anything, it is that roster building never truly stops. As training camp rolls toward those final roster cutdowns in a couple of weeks, do not be surprised if Holmes continues working the phones, whether that means adding a depth piece at another position of need or scooping up a player who gets released by another team during final cuts. This front office has built a reputation for finding value in exactly these kinds of moments, and the Devin White signing feels like a perfect example of Brad Holmes doing what he does best, staying patient, staying aggressive, and pouncing the moment the board lines up in Detroit's favor. So here's where we want to hear from you. Is Devin White a steal for this Lions defense, a low-cost, high-upside gamble that pays off in a big way? Or is this simply a name-value depth signing that will not move the needle much once the pads really start popping in the regular season? Drop your honest take down in the comments, because we read every single one of them, and this is exactly the kind of debate that makes Lions football so much fun heading into another highly anticipated season. Before you go, we have to ask, Detroit Scope is closing in on 100 subscribers, and our next big goal is 1,000, and we simply cannot get there without you. If you enjoyed breaking down this Devin White signing with us, do us a favor and smash that subscribe button, hit the like, and turn on notifications so you never miss a beat of Lions news the moment it breaks. Drop a comment letting us know what other Lions storylines you want us covering next. We'll be back very soon with more breaking Detroit Lions news. So until then, this has been Detroit Scope. Stay locked in, Lions fans, because this offseason is far from over.